Alright, welcome. I'm off camera. I'm going to stand up on my soapbox. Actually had a speaker to stand up on, but I think it put me out of the frame, so technically not really a soapbox. Look, I'm not a person who wants to get in front of a camera, but welcome. I've been doing stability testing, VR titles, and that's why I'm doing this video. I want to share with the community. I've probably got a bait heading of some sort. So if you've come along and I haven't caught your attention inside of 30 seconds, I know the metrics are that you'll slide along. I'll try to be a little bit more human inside of my first minute. I guess I'll use that as a filter, that if you don't have the patience to listen to another human being for even like 30 seconds as they trip over themselves and make errors and don't do the anti-human thing of editing their own speech, right? And the thing we can't do in public, right? Like a natural dialogue. Just to encourage people that real humans are out there and that the internet doesn't represent what real human engagement is. So obviously this is just a one-way talk, so I apologise for potentially wasting your time. If you've come to this video, it's possibly because you're really frustrated, and I totally get that. And so, like, seriously, a tear in my eye right now. I empathise with where you're coming from. Okay, so stability testing. Look, I've been going through the gamut. I've been in the same shoes you've been in, right? I had a game that I could run fine, and everyone else was saying, no, lots of issues, right? And it was to the point where I couldn't see it. And so I had to try to go out of my way to actually make my machine break as well. And then I managed to do it, right? And then I was pulling my hair out because I couldn't undo it, right? I didn't know what I'd done to make it happen, which turned out was just default game settings. And default game settings were going to lead to massive, massive issues. So, as it turns out, it wasn't a game setting. It was actually a Steam VR setting. Just give me a second, I'll let my cat out of the room. You're going to get very vocal otherwise, aren't you, Chris? There you go. Okay. Alright, so, yeah, it turned out it wasn't actually a game issue. But I didn't know that. I didn't know that until I'd done lots of further testing, right? And I was at the point, after 2 days, of just display driver uninstalls and reinstalls and looking at everybody else's solution to this issue, not quite having a straight direction to go in. And yeah, it pretty huge. Anyway, so could affect all VR titles, all VR titles. So I was using the standard Steam VR front end, and it's a setting, it's connected to the motion smoothing. Now, basically, if you're keen to get your game and you want to put my solution in play right now, you don't have to listen on further this video. I encourage you to stick around because I'm going to keep this video really short. It is going to be less than, I'm going to go with about 15 minutes, right? But it'll probably be about 12. And I'm going to spend about 4 minutes, maybe 7, right? Hopefully a jovial analogy. But I'm going to explain why it would affect a game completely because of one little thing that was going wrong. And what's worse is it's an intermittent issue. It doesn't affect everyone. And nobody really, if you don't know how to turn it on, what's causing it, nobody can do optimization testing when there's a range of issues that are being reported and nobody's really aware of why they're having these issues and what is actually causing it. So look, yeah, again, motion smoothing, turn it off in the Steam VR front end, and right, game will hopefully work better, right? Yeah, if you're off already listening to that, or if you come back to this video going, well, that didn't work for me and you've got another issue, okay, well, you've got another issue. But if you want to know why it might make a difference, listen on. Okay, so affecting all VR titles. Why is that? Well, okay, it probably doesn't affect all VR titles, hence why nobody knows the issue, why it hasn't been reported to Steam VR, the makers of an app, of the front end, why it hasn't been fixed, right? So why hasn't it been fixed? Okay, well, it basically could fly under the radar. Okay, it flew under the radar for me for a solid week. I was having a flawless experience. Everyone's going, oh no, he's like the only person in here with a flawless experience. Everyone else is having issues. And so my argument to that was then, well, happy people are off using the product, and it's just the people who are having issues that come to forums to talk about it. So There might be some validity in that. That's a consumer metric from before the internet, that an unhappy person tells 10 people and a happy person might tell 3. So I was going around saying, sort out your page file. Why? Because my machine, in an effort to make the game run poorly from the get-go, right, as part of my testing, I just went in and turned motion smoothing off. I went brute force, 90 frames a second, reprojection free, just crank everything to max and try to make frame gen happen, right? I didn't have an issue, right? I'd magically turned off the setting that would break the game before I even first turned the game on. Literally, the first time I fired it up in the first few seconds, I went in and I went, oh, I'll turn that setting off. I want to see what's causing bottlenecks. And by doing that, I removed my opportunity to see the bottlenecks that might be affecting everyone. Okay, so it was a bit silly. I didn't know, right? It took me a week to find it. How did I find it? Okay, I use a locked page file. So my page file was sitting at about 50 gigabytes. And as a way to keep things running optimal, I run with 3 SSD drives in my machine. I have Windows on one drive, I have my page file on another drive, and I have my games on a different drive yet. And I actually, depending on the game, I might shuffle things around. Some SSD drives will hit the CPU really hard when they're moving data. And so that's where your benchmark suites don't show the difference between a Pro drive and a budget drive, like an Evo drive. Because on a desktop productivity level, your CPU's not being worked flat out, and you can dedicate 2 to 4 cores, 100%, to doing the function that a Pro drive has, a dedicated CPU or a controller chip to do that for you, and it actually offsets the need to burden your CPU down. So in your benchmark tests and all those things as a consumer, you know, white belts and yellow belts that we all are, we try to read other people's work and we go, oh look, they basically benchmark the same, I'll save half the money or I'll get twice the space for the same amount of money. And that's a win. You know, for my gaming build, I can build it a little bit cheaper. That's what we just about all do. And so what I've learned is that because I'm running a 10-year-old rig, and that's why it was weird. Why do I not have performance issues on a really hard to run title that everyone else is having issues with? I'm so far below minimum spec, it's just not funny. But Pro drives, and as I said, I've got, you know, Windows on one, page file on another, games on another. So really no input-output burdens. I can sort of run everything in parallel. And if one's overburdened, you know, and I've got to write to page file, I'm not losing my input-output operations on one drive while I write to another drive, where most people will have Windows, page file, and game all on one drive. So the game will load, and if in this case, right, with 100 megabytes per second memory leak, as caused by Steam VR front end, my page file was filling up. The problem is, with such a huge page file, it was taking a long time to fill up. You got to remember, this was only a week or 10 days down the track once I'd finally turned motion smoothing on, so I could see, you know, well, come on, let's set this up the way everyone else is using it. How come I can't make this game broken, right? And so, just by pure fortune, I'd started to experience it. And what was happening is, once my page file was getting full, it was dropping to desktop. And I was like, oh, what's going on? Like, and then I I'm shuffling my page file around, and eventually I just made a huge page file, so sitting about 94 gig. So then I could play the game for longer before it would drop to desktop. But I still wasn't having input-output issues, or I still wasn't having performance issues because of the nature of having so many drives in parallel, right? But the standard user, the average user, right, possibly you, because you wanted to save some money on your build and you use a budget drive, when your RAM finally fills up, because 100 megabytes a second, right, 0.1 increments constantly happening, filling up, filling up, filling up. Once your RAM fills up, well then your machine goes, oh, we better start writing what's in RAM to the drive. Now you can imagine, okay, this doesn't affect typical VR games because 99% of them are just Quest ports, right? Low-end hardware. They only lean on the graphics card, and we can super sample everything and crank the settings to ultra and over-render like crazy, and we don't get any performance issues whatsoever. But when you come across a game that's well optimized to squeeze, I would say equal to a PlayStation 5, which is highly customized architecture for squeezing out Unreal Engine and virtual reality, right? We can talk about that in another video, but very hard to do. And so if you've got a cutting-edge PC that can overcome bus bottlenecks, you know, PlayStation might have direct injection where it can get data straight to the video RAM, arguably, or it's shared RAM essentially, not an issue. But on a PC where you've got get data to your graphics card via your system RAM and everything's a little bit more loaded down, all of a sudden putting some bottlenecks in can really cause performance issues. But the veritable perfect storm doesn't end there, because what actually happens, right, is that once your system RAM gets full and it's got to start writing to your drive, the ability for your drive to now read and load system RAM or load VRAM or load your sound banks, right? You find a little video message in your game and it's got to play it, right? For a little bit of writing, that's not an issue on a drive. But once the little bit of memory on that drive is full and the write performance drops right down because the buffer's gone, all of a sudden you might only have a few hundred megabytes a second of input-output performance. And you're trying to write at least 100 megabytes a second, because that's the leak size per second. All of a sudden you've got your input to the drive is absolutely overburdened, your output is absolutely limited and curtailed, right? Your system RAM is just trying to do inputs and outputs, and your VRAM's going, I need more data, and everything is starting to hit what we call bottlenecks or choking. And so a lot of people were saying that their video cards weren't fully loaded or they were getting stutters. And so in a game like, and I specifically say here Alien Rogue Incursion because it's optimized to the metal. It's that they use NVIDIA 4090s for 30-minute pre-renders on special effects in the game, right? So the game is designed to run well potentially on Quest and potentially low-end hardware. And so it does a little bit of a trick where it overlays cutting-edge Hollywood graphics over the top of game world. And so to do that, it's got to be able to stream this data in, right? And it's not an issue if everyone's buses are working the way they should. If your minimum specs are that you've got the 12 cores needed for the game, right? Not losing 4 of them to a budget SSD while the game's running. And if you've got the right amount of RAM for the game, as is needed without a memory leak, right? You should be able to at least equal a PlayStation, right? That's the way it's designed to work. But it hasn't been working that way for anyone or everyone, apparently. If you listen to the noise, right? Again, some people are off there happy using the product. Sadly, a lot of people are getting caught out. And for Servius to get on top of an intermittent issue that's not actually in their game, very difficult, right? I say this having been in the games industry, having been in art teams and having been in optimization or working with engines and giving feedback to the people on the team, go, yeah, change that, we need this, etc. Right? Like, it can be really difficult if the problem isn't yours. If it's coming from a front end that at the end of the day you have faith in, because every other game, just like everyone else says, works fine, right? No one has any reason to believe there's an issue. So, fortunately, yesterday I tripped up my machine, and once I could see that the Steam VR front end dead, that the game had no more memory leak, I've been in contact constantly with Servius, and they've been wonderful, easy to communicate with, and to fro. And so straight away I could send them a video saying, guys, stop focusing on your game, right? The random intermittent issue is actually elsewhere, right? All of a sudden they're going to be able to get on top of the true optimization that's needed for the final refinements. So if anyone wants to learn about optimization, go see Daniel Owen's video on optimization. It'll explain about the stages and where the team are at, because the product was highly optimized. I could see it on a base PlayStation 5, which is where I've put in 40, 50 hours of the game play. And it's smooth as on what we call low-end hardware almost, console. Right? Okay, it's highly customized hardware, don't let the truth get in the way of a good argument, but not the point of this video. So what happens when all your lanes from your drive, which should be on an out, right? They should all be going one way to your system RAM. And all of a sudden, you've got to knock a couple of them back, right? It's peak hour. For some reason, people are coming out of the city. Your particular town planning department has limited lanes, and so what they do is at certain times of the day, they change them up in the order. And so all of a sudden, with the system RAM totally choked and having to write to your page file, it can no longer have all lanes going towards the system RAM. So it has to kind of shut a few of them down and start writing a few of them out. So now you're choking the ability to get data to your GPU, right? And once all these chokes start coming in, and your CPU is overburdened because there's so much drive access, and writing is probably a little bit more intensive than reading for most budget drives, like significantly so. So yeah, no other game has been having any issues. All other games are running at max resolution, max potentials. And then one game comes out that's optimized to use your PC to the metal, right? Something we all want to have happen. We want studios to push the boundaries a bit further, right? Even putting settings in the game for future hardware, right? So I'm happy to run the game on a mix of high and medium, and that's with like a $2,000 odd video card, right? Like I'm happy to run, and the game defaults are quite brilliant, quite lovely. And I'd have to say, like, shadows on medium, from what I can see, there's a twisty wheel at the start of the game, you look down a pipe, and at the particular middle distance, the PlayStation drops to fairly low-res shadows at that distance, and on the PC, absolutely not. So it's rendering better quality shadows further out on the medium draw distance and on the medium shadow setting. So dare I say that the medium settings are actually better than PS5, and you know, PS5 looks amazing. So with this game sorted, it should run brilliantly on PC. I've been running it at 90, reprojection free. Now that being said, the point of my video is to talk a little bit about why people might have been experiencing poor performance and why it might stand out more in a cutting edge title that is really well optimized, and actually lead us to believe it's not well optimized. It's actually the opposite. The fact that it's so well optimized is why we're experiencing it looking like it isn't. You just got to remember all those other games that you're running are really budget and basic games. They're not using nanite and rendering 100,000 times more polygons per frame, right? Like, absolutely incredible what UE5 is doing. It is cutting edge. It's an amazing looking game, Alien Rogue Incursion, as is any other game you might, if you've come to this video and you've been having issues, right? It's probably because you're running a cutting edge game. They're the ones that reveal the issue, and that's the reason why all the other games get away with the free hall pass and don't cause us any issues. And again, I used a locked page file. If you don't use a locked page file, you just continue adding 100 megabytes, 100 megabytes, 100 megabytes every second, and you'll just choke, like I just described. The SSD will get choked. The system RAM will be choked, it can't get its data. The CPU is choked because it's trying to do too much drive operations just to maintain a basic bit of hardware. Everything gets choked down. So, look, if my video device is recording, I doubt it is, but if we're still recording, I'm just going to quickly show, look, as part of my, I'll change the focus so I can see my screen. All right. Part of playtesting all night long, I should have a focus button somewhere around here. Why is my focus button not working? Okay, it's not. I don't know why. I'm just going to manually focus. There we go. All right, so I'm just going to trust that can see the screen. Right, in the bottom corner, it should have current session. It should say 11 and a half hours. Right, so I was able to have that running all night last night. Yes, I am just on the desktop menu of the game, so the GPU memory isn't fully loaded, but what does matter is the GPU's been loaded 99% or 100% all night long. It's been running for 11 and a half hours, right? So if I come over to performance, this is sort of neither here nor there, it's just my rig. Fan speed is up. It was actually 2400. I had the aircon on a little bit before because running my computer at nearly 100 degrees Celsius in Australian summer heat wave right now, we've got north of 40 degree temperature days, which is 105 Fahrenheit, and we get a week of that, so it's kind of warm. So yeah, look, this machine running stable all night long, which was something I couldn't get, even with a 98 gigabyte page file. I couldn't get this game to run for long enough really to hit save points in the game. So look, if you've been having an issue, it is to do with if you've been having a Steam leak, a RAM leak caused by Steam VR front end, it is going to be 100 megabytes a second was what I was experiencing. It will lead to performance issues or slowdowns, or if you've got a locked page file, possibly you get a message where it says, I added VRAM. It's an interesting little message. But look, it would have been leading everyone to be bandwidth choked and poor performance in titles that are actually highly optimized. So, look, a bit of a thank you, just some due diligence, housekeeping. Thank you to Servius. They really have been working with me. I've had such an easy time getting communication with them. They're a wonderful team. They send the information off to the respective departments, and they're really splitting their teams effectively, right? They've got people working on optimization. They're retroporting optimization that works well on other platforms to the PC, where if they do actually find something that needs further tweaking in the final stage of optimization sort of thing. But they're really now going to be able to double down and figure that out. Now that potentially a lot of people will be able to self-soothe or figure out their own stuff, but they've just been absolutely amazing in terms of listening to me. As a community, we are all much stronger together, and that's what really matters. So, let's work together. Let's share the knowledge, and let's all be better for it. The game is wonderful. It is now nice to be able to. I mean, I'm running a fairly overclocked card there. To be able to run it all night long, I'm actually finding it's just lovely. So look, by all means, enjoy your game, and give it another go. If you thought you were having performance woes, the default Steam setting is with that motion smoothing on. I found that by going into the Steam front end and going on a per title basis, I could actually turn it off just for the games that might have been showing performance issues. If you need your motion smoothing on your table tennis simulator, by all means run it. But for the time being, until Steam get onto this and until the issues are remedied, we can sort out our own issues simply by turning the motion smoothing off in the Steam VR front end. Alrighty, well wishes with you. I hope all your gaming time is pleasant. And maybe I'll catch you on another one. But look, hopefully it's not a tech support one. Hopefully it's just state of the industry and having fun with cutting edge titles. Okay, great day to thee.